Yeah, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Laura Farley. I'm a mom of 4 children, a teacher, artist, hiker, and I was born deaf. I grew up bilingually, using both American Sign Language and my voice to communicate. For the last 6 years, I have been teaching at Austin Peay State University to the community teaching American Sign Language. I'm a huge advocate for using sign language for deaf children. We all have fundamental needs, such as food, water, shelter, but not all of our needs are only physical. As human beings, we also have emotional needs. We need to feel loved, belonging, to be heard and understood. Much of these emotional needs are met through communication. For deaf people living in a world made for hearing, communication is a major obstacle that many of them face, especially within their hearing families. Before I go any further, I want to talk about these statistical facts. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, but only 20% of these parents learn to sign to communicate with their child. So let me repeat that again. 90%, a huge number of deaf children are born to hearing parents, but only a very small number, 20%, of these parents use sign language to communicate with their child. This is problematic because deaf people cannot learn how to hear. And if they do learn how to speak and read lips, or get a cochlear implant or hearing aids, their understanding is still very limited. These children often become isolated within their families, and they miss out on the important communication and connection. So how do hearing families of deaf children prevent this problem? I would like to share with you my story. My parents were part of the 20% of parents that learn to sign with their deaf child. They didn't discover that I was deaf until I was 1 year old. I never learned how to speak, I didn't respond to sound, and I threw a lot of tantrums because I couldn't communicate when I wanted or needed. When my hearing was finally tested, it came out that I was profoundly deaf. I was fitted with hearing aids, which did not help much. My parents asked what could they do to help me have the best life I could as a deaf child. They were given only 2 options by the professionals they saw. One was to teach me how to speak and live like a hearing person, and the other was to send me to a school for the deaf and only use sign language. My mom, she's a very strong-willed, intelligent, and extremely observant woman. She immediately knew that what she needed to do was to give me all the tools available to help me to succeed in life. And the very first step to doing that was giving me the language I had 100% access to, which was sign language. My parents immediately began taking sign language classes, and they came home and taught me everything that they had learned. When my parents look back and think about the first time that I realized that there was language, they say it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I ran to different objects and pointed to them, and my mom would show me the sign. And I would clap my hands in joy and repeat the sign and go on to the next person or thing to learn who or what it was. Things had names, people had names, feelings had names. All of these words could string together into phrases and sentences. My mom and dad could finally understand me. I could communicate when I needed, what I saw, what I felt. I could finally express myself and be seen and heard. So now, put yourself in a deaf person's shoes. Imagine yourself watching people speak to you, but not being able to understand what they are saying, and not being able to respond in a way that the other person would understand. How do you think you would feel? I would imagine that you would probably feel isolated, frustrated, marginalized, ostracized, anxious, hurt, and sad. Unfortunately, these feelings are what many deaf children who do not have access to sign language may experience. And the more awareness there is about the benefits of sign language, the more we could prevent the isolation of deaf people. Now, many parents get overwhelmed with learning sign language, and understandably so. It takes a lot of time, like the crazy parents work, they have other children. I have heard from parents themselves that one of the reasons that they don't want to learn sign is that they feel like they would never be fluent or they lack the skills to learn. As a deaf child raised by hearing parents and being part of the deaf community, I promise you that deaf people always appreciate it when people closer to them take time to learn to communicate with them in a way that they can fully understand. We never expect them to be fluent. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she spent a lot of time with me. She got very, very good at signing and interpreting. However, my dad had to work a lot. He traveled a lot for work. And my sister was only 18 months younger than me. They both tried their very best to learn sign language. But a lot of their signs were wrong, and some of them were just flat out made up. But I could understand my dad and sister. I loved the wrong signs. I never corrected them because I felt like we had our own secret language. I loved it when they would interpret for me. My parents and my sister were never perfect signers, but because they took the time and effort to communicate with me, I am forever grateful. Now, I want to address the misconception that's floating out there among parents of deaf children and even professionals that teaching a deaf child sign language will hold them back. And I promise you this is not true. It's kind of silly that we even have to have a conversation that you have to pick only sign language or only spoken language. Deaf people can be bilingual. Deaf people are incredibly smart and adaptable when given all the tools they need. They can use both sign language and spoken language. They can even learn other foreign languages. Sometimes they may choose to only use sign language, but they are able to navigate the hearing world incredibly well. Success and intelligence does not rely on a person's ability to speak, but on their ability to communicate. And there's never just one way to communicate. What's important is that deaf children get the opportunity to learn and experience communication as early as possible. Studies show that early access to language is imperative for a child's brain development. And please don't buy into the misconception that cochlear implants and hearing aids are the answer to a child's deafness. It is only a tool. Sometimes it's helpful, but sometimes it's not. Each person's level of success with these hearing devices vary and they are uncertain. But what is always certain for a deaf person is the visual language. For people with ears that don't hear, a visual language is far more rewarding, less exhausting, less confusing, and less frustrating than a spoken language. The message I'd like to leave with you is, if you are a parent of a deaf child or someone close to a deaf child, take the time to learn to sign. I promise you, you will never regret it. It will open the doors for communication and connection. It's absolutely worth the effort. The best thing that anyone can do for a deaf child is to give them all the tools that they need to succeed in life, study with the language that they have the most access to, and then letting them pick what works best for them. Rachel Kolb, an incredible, intelligent deaf writer, speaker, and disability advocate, says the best: communication is never a given. Thank you.